I want to break down last night's fight between Tony Ferguson and Michael Chandler. Now, after this vicious upkick from Michael Chandler in round 2 with Tony Ferguson, we learned he was immediately transported to the hospital. What was scary about this moment was he was down on the canvas for, I don't know the exact time, but it seemed to be minutes where he was literally not moving. So we seem to be seeing a lot of these upkicks lately, and it's a tremendous amount of force to the bottom of the chin, which basically is causing a car crash on the inside of the skull where the brain is. When Chandler is kicking his chin up, his whole skeleton is moving up and his brain then has to catch up. So it's ricocheting on the inside of that skull, basically causing the knockout. When they're down for several minutes like that, I think it was the right move to send him to the hospital. And as a ringside physician, what we're making sure that we're trying to do is rule out any injuries to the brain or to the cervical spine. So not only during the knockout itself, but when Tony Ferguson goes down, it's like a falling tree basically, it can cause another injury to the brain or even the cervical spine if his head or neck gets torqued or has a bad rotational component to that fall. Got transported to the hospital, and what those emergency room doctors are doing when they bring him in is obviously we want to be asking him, what kind of symptoms are you having? If he has symptoms of a brain injury, it would be something like confusion, something like dizziness, if he's slurring his speech, if he's not aware where he's at. The gold standard for a study, what we have to do would be order a head CT scan while they are in the emergency room. And what all that will really show is that there's not a brain bleed, okay? So as long as that head CT scan is normal, we know that there's not anything emergent in terms of, bleeding in the brain that can be a surgical emergency. But other signs of concussions and things like that a lot of times do not show up on imaging. And again, depending on his symptoms, if he was experiencing any neck pain, they'd also go ahead and order neck x-rays, even a cervical or neck CT scan to make sure there wasn't any bony injuries. We did get an updated tweet from John Morgan saying that Tony Ferguson's head CT scan was thankfully negative and he was discharged from the hospital. So that tells us not only, no brain bleeds on that head CT scan, and his symptoms must have subsided or didn't have any symptoms that would warrant him to be admitted to the hospital. The thought process why fighters get immediately shipped to the hospital, especially after these vicious knockouts, and these are the tests that they would be ordering while they're in the emergency room. So all the best to Tony Ferguson. It was really a great round 1 until that upkick occurred. I really hope we haven't seen the last of Tony Ferguson. He's such an exciting fighter. He's a fan favorite, of course. He's a one-of-a-kind guy, but obviously we don't want to keep seeing potential brain injuries like this in the upcoming future. So that's the breakdown on the thought process on sending these UFC fighters straight to the emergency room, especially after a vicious knockout or when they're unconscious for several minutes. If you guys enjoy the breakdown, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Never miss another one. Again, I'm Dr. David Abbasi, and we'll see you guys here on the next one. All the best to Tony Ferguson.